wanted to do is they wanted to create their own TV show that paid homage to the show that they wanted to do. So they created Stranger Things, which is a little bit of a mix of X-Files meets Stephen King.
I think that's exactly how you and I were describing this last week when we were
Absolutely.
talking about it. And I'd only at that time I'd only watched the first episode of it, and you went up and you had made it, the reference of it being cross between X Files and Stephen King. And I said yes, exactly. That's exactly. I mean, that's the best way I think to go off and to describe this.
Yeah, and there's going to be some spoilers, obviously, for you and for other listeners. But they really do quote Stephen King in this movie as well. They also quote, make reference to it as well. Clowns, things like that. So they definitely do the shout outs.
They did. They actually mentioned it. I believe in episode. It was either the first or second episode where they actually brought it up that Will is talking with his mother, played by Winona Ryder, about it and about she was going to take him to see a movie, and they kind of teased him about how scared he got of the clowns.
Yeah, and I think that was a really unique point. Most movies or TV series or even books really pay homage to what Stephen King has created in his little world, and it's unbelievable to think that such a movie actually helped create such an iconic TV series right now. And unfortunately, it's only on Netflix. Hasn't been officially renewed for season 2.
There's already talk about it. They're already talking about season 2 is pretty much going to be the aftermath of what happens in season 1. Again, I mean, I don't know too much. There's one thing. I know there has been some speculation amongst fans that maybe Bonnie is still alive.
Yes.
But no, she's dead.
There's definitely a lot of speculation on a lot of things. And like the last episode, and I know you haven't seen it, but it definitely really leaves a lot of questions. And most TV series, even after like the first season or a couple seasons, it doesn't really leave you wanting more. This one does.
Well, that tends to be something that a lot of science fiction shows tend to do. I know that. I mean, one of the few exceptions that I remember was Stargate SG-1, where they never knew if they were going to be renewed for the next year, so they always tried to finish up their storyline by the end of the season. But there was other series where they definitely had cliffhangers going into the next season, with the hopes that they would go up and get renewed.
See, there are cliffhangers, and then there was this. Basically, they revealed a bunch of different things, but they left more answers than they've ever answered during the entire 8 episodes.
Questions than.
Oh, sorry, yeah, more questions than anything they've actually answered, and I've very much enjoyed it. I've wanted to keep watching it. I've wanted to watch it over and over and over again. And it's that show that just keeps on giving.
I love the writing on this. I love the foreshadowing on this. I love in the first episode they're playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons, which back then, people were like really freaking out about. And there's something that young Will, who's the boy who goes missing, I won't give away too much. He goes off and he makes a reference to they're playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons, and he goes off and he says, he rolled, I can't remember, I think it was rolled a 7.
He rolled a 7.
And that the monster had got him. And so, that was kind of nice foreshadowing to what was about to happen. And, there's multiple times where, just over the first 4 episodes I've watched, where there's clear foreshadowing where they make some sort of like references, and okay, something bad is about to happen.
And it wasn't so much that you expected something. It was, it made you hopeful. You would expect something really, really, really good to happen, and all of a sudden something negative would happen, or something surprising, something you wouldn't actually expect. And I think that's what they did best. They took this, very mystery storyline, so to speak, and they really kind of put a huge dose of sci-fi, a little bit of mystery, and a lot of finding yourself along the way. So when it comes to Stephen King, the ones that actually really stand out to me is Stand By Me, with the boys hunting for the dead body, Dreamcatcher with the special powers, and definitely a lot of It. So these are definitely ones that really stand out to me, and I think that's iconic because most TV series, most movies cannot idolize that many shows or that many movies in one and do it perfectly.
It's just, I mean, you can definitely tell that the writers here. It's definitely their love letter towards and to Stephen King and to this whole genre.
I think it was more than just that. I think in a way this is what we could have done.
It could absolutely, I think if they had the phenomenal cast that they had. I mean, I want to talk about Winona Ryder for a while, just for a moment. I mean, I will honestly say that I wasn't a huge fan of hers going into this. I've seen a couple things that she's been in, but I can't say I really enjoyed her work that much. I absolutely am becoming a fan of her, and as her character Joyce, I was falling in. I felt bad for her. I felt my heart actually going out to her. I mean, she's playing this role so well.
When you actually see an actress or an actor playing their role, and you actually feel compassion and pain and emotion for that, shows how much energy that they put into this role. And for it being a Netflix show, it's phenomenal, the energy that they have done into all their different characters, and I'm blown away by what she was able to do. And
I mean, the whole the main cast on this, like all these kids are great. I love them, especially the Millie Bobby Brown who plays Eleven.
Yes,
I mean, she just like I mean, these kids. I mean, if they were like 11 years old or whatever, I don't know how old these kids are, but I mean, at that age, I can't imagine being able to do be as good as them. I mean, these are kids that are acting better than some of the adults.
Yeah, there's actually one of those kids that we really need to speak about, and that is the main boy. I really can't, I think you have his name pulled up.
Are you talking about, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about Will, or are you talking about Mike? Mike, who's played by Finn Wolfhard.
Okay,
oh my God.
This is a boy that did a phenomenal job on Stranger Things, but it almost never happened. They actually originally cast him, or they wanted him in this TV series, which was really good. They were going to pursue him, and then they found out that he was actually hired to be casted in It. So they're like,
wow.
Oh, we can't get him, so we got to start looking elsewhere. They slowed production for It, so he became available. So the Duffer Brothers swooped in, brought him in. They figured he was the perfect Mike, and he rightfully was. And right after they finished production of Stranger Things, he was brought back into It. So he will actually be in both. So
that's phenomenal. I mean, talk about 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon here, man.
Yeah, to go from Stranger Things, which is basically paying homage to It, to actually playing in It. It's phenomenal and extraordinary for such a young kid to have that much talent that literally 2 companies are fighting over him. So good job on him, and just wow! Like you'll be seeing him. You'll be seeing him again in It, which will be in 2 parts, which is really great. Some of the pictures coming out of that are absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I've not made it any secret. I'm not a huge fan of Stephen King movies. I mean, there's some stuff that I love. I loved the Stand miniseries. Tommyknockers I didn't mind, but I mean, It has always been one that I was never really big into, just because I mean, the whole idea of killing children has never really appealed to me.
You don't have to be a fan of Stephen King to recognize the genius of his writing.
The man is an absolute genius. I mean, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned this online, but his publicist, his agent, limits how much material or how many books that Stephen King is put out every year. But Stephen King, he's literally a 9-to-5 writer, so he just writes every single day. So it's quite possible that after his death, we might be seeing Stephen King books coming out for a good 10 years.
Yeah, it's. I kind of wish he actually put his writing style and his writing enthusiasm towards other writers to convince them to keep the hell up. I don't know, Martin is a perfect example.
Yeah, from the Game of Thrones books.
Yeah, if you can write a few more books, A
Dance of Fire and Ice, I believe, is what the series is called.
Oh yeah,
yeah. George R.R. Martin, I think that's what his name is.
Yeah,
that guy. Yeah.
He really needs to learn how to write faster.
I think he takes up the J.R.R. Tolkien style of writing. It took Tolkien 17 years to write Lord of the Rings. So.
Yeah, and they've confirmed that yes, it will be in 2 parts. And unlike the original movie, they will be following the book almost to a T, which means darker, more gruesome, more scary, more terrifying, and more awesome.
And
for people like me, of course.
2 more reasons for me not to go off and go see it.
I will be one of those ones who will be probably first person in line to see this movie, and rightfully so. Like, I've always been a huge Stephen King fan, and anything that's really based off Stephen King, I flock to.
So you obviously have went off and seen Pet Sematary 2, which was...
I have seen Pet Sematary 2. Now, keep in mind, though, yes, it's sort of based off Stephen King, but Pet Sematary 2 never exactly existed. Therefore, it's not Stephen King.
I'm just saying that, there's, Stephen King, and then there's people who go off and rip off Stephen King. It's kind of like Jaws and then Jaws 2.
It's like Carrie, constantly being redone. And, Carrie was good, and then they kind of fumbled it somehow, and it just became what it is now. Stephen King has inspired so many greats out there, and I really hope that Stranger Things becomes that next great, because they have that potential to be even be better than what they are.
This is... I've said before, I'm not a big fan of scary stuff. I'm not a big fan of children being killed, but I'm definitely a fan of this series. If you guys have got Netflix, I encourage you, check out this show. 8 episodes. It's really damn good.
Just don't watch it alone. This is something that is deserving of watching in a group.
What was freaking me out last night is my son, 3 years old. He wanted to go off, and he didn't want to go to bed. He wanted to stay up with Daddy. And part of the reason why I ended up not watching that much last night is I didn't want him to watch this stuff. Because, that's too much for a 3-year-old to go off and be watching. But, he was sitting there, and he wasn't flinching. But, there was times where, okay, it's starting to get scary. And I would just push, the button so that it would kind of zoom through. I'd be able to see what was going on. But, it wouldn't be, a lot under the screen to go off and, absolutely freak him out.
No, I fully agree. But you definitely need to get to that point where you're watching all of it. The 8th and final episode of this season is a really complete emotional tease. Really... It's hard to explain. It's one of those things you absolutely have to watch. And that's just not just for you, that's for everybody. Even if you've seen it before, rewatch it. Definitely worth it.
Initially I planned to go off and watch the whole series before we came on here, so that would be able to talk about the whole season, and that's part of the reason why we're kind of holding back a little bit, because I didn't get...
I don't want to ruin it.
Exactly.
Apparently, there is somebody very dear to us who is going to be watching the show after we finish here, but they're going to be watching it alone. So, Weem, my heart is with you. I will be there in the corner, scaring the hell out of you after every intermission. Just because we love you, Weem.
Yeah, we love you, Weem.
we can pretty much talk about a lot of different things going on.
I don't know. I'm gonna throw it out there. This past weekend was for me, and part of the reason why I didn't watch Stranger Things is just because this was a phenomenal weekend for professional wrestling. I won't go off and we'll speak into everything. As I've mentioned a couple times on the show, I am a fan of Chikara. Chikara had their first live event on their site, Chikaratopia, and so I got to watch that. Plus, WWE had there was NXT's latest takeover in Brooklyn, which was great. Plus SummerSlam, which I wasn't paying close attention to a lot of it because my son wanted